Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Yesterday, official release of Last Epoch 1.0, a game by 11th Hour Games, and I'm a pretty big fan of this game. And yeah, you guys know how it is with new games coming up, official releases, league releases, cycle releases, season releases, and so on and so forth. There has been minor server issues, okay? Nah, it was an actual shit show. It was actually that bad. Okay, what happened yesterday? So, basically at 6 p.m., the official release time, you could download the final patch, and surprisingly, that went very well. It was like a 7 gigabytes, 8 gigabytes patch. Was downloaded for my internet in like 10 minutes or so. Was quite fine, but yeah, first login happened. I reached level 4 on my, Druid, my primalist here. And, I couldn't visit the town, so I, tried to relog and then couldn't log in for like half an hour. Then I finally got in. I cleared the entire starting zone again. I couldn't enter the town. I pressed Alt F4. I couldn't log in. Half an hour later, I could log in. I did again the starting zone. I was already level 6 or something. No, wait, level 4 point something. And yeah, I couldn't like log into town, and that kind of like kept me away from progressing. And after the third or fourth time of hitting Alt F4 because the game was kind of stuck, I had to wait about, I'd say like 5 hours or so until I could finally log in and try to like continue the campaign more or less, right? So the thing is, though, I'm not a dev. I'm not anybody that is knowledgeable about servers and capacities and whatnot. All I know as a gamer is, can I play or can I not play? Whatever is the fact or the matter that I cannot play, I don't really care about that. I want to log in and want to play the game, and if I can't, then yeah, that kind of sucks. But thing is, though, I'm not judging it too hard that there was like a very, let's say, rough start, because honestly, which game doesn't have like big hiccups when there is like a game launching and stuff like that? For example, we have it in Diablo. We had it in PoE, on every other game that I played. I'm not even gonna start talking about Volson, because to beat that, holy shit, you gotta fuck up pretty hard right there, right? But, for example, as a PoE player, it's my 23rd league or something, and there has at least been like 10 times or so where the login queues weren't working properly. There was even like a big shit show where streamers got priority queue and stuff like that because they couldn't figure out how to manage to get everybody to be playing the game and stuff like that. So, even other games, when they have repeatedly 3-month cycles, they have hiccups when there is launches. And for an official release, it is what it is. But after, I think, like 5 or 6 hours, somewhere at midnight, I could finally log in and start pushing the campaign. Even though I had like longer loading screens and stuff like that, and I still had to relog occasionally, but they kind of have fixed it. Hopefully by now it's the next day at some point. I think like I did the first 3 chapters, and then I said like, you know what, time for badge, time for some rest, and hopefully wake up tomorrow and everything is working. And turns out so far it is. So let's jump in-game and see what are we playing with. AMB Extreme, the Druid level 27, currently at the Chapter 4, the Outcast and the Empire. This is pretty much the first, the first take. We're going to talk about the leveling pros and stuff like that. I hope the loading screens are working. I hope I can finally visit another thing, but apparently things working. So don't judge it too hard, Can happen, will happen, and it was expected that it happens. It was quite funny to actually read through all the tweets and stuff where people literally 10 minutes after launch was like, hey, I cannot log in, I want a refund and stuff like that. But yeah, so anyways, let's talk about the build that I want to make, the plans and stuff like that, the leveling part, and kind of a bit of a guidance if you want to follow the build that I'm playing. This is actually the first self-made build, so this might be a complete cheat show. I have no idea, But I'm super hyped and pumped to play this build, to gear it up and see if everything that I cooked up comes out or plays well together. Basically, the idea of the build is having an Autobomber one-button build that, yeah, just uses a movement skill to clear everything in the game. Pretty much, that's the idea, right? But I don't want to spoil it too much. It's just about to get everything set up. So the initial idea was to level with Thorn Totems, but I ended up not to, just because they released a new skill, which is called the Gathering Storm, which is basically a melee attack where you basically load up an area and then basically have lightning strikes coming down and hitting monsters. And I thought this might actually be quite fun. Let me actually put up the sound here a bit. They actually have some in-game sounds. With this ability, then I can further proc my Maelstrom, my kind of Blade Vortex kind of thingy, and just browse through the game. But after some time, especially at level 16, 17, when I finally unlocked the Druid, I got access to my Werebear form. And honestly, since I have that, we have Rampage, we have Roar, which is basically stacking up more Maelstrom. We have Maul with a big slam ability, and some slashes, which is your auto attack. Since I unlocked the Werebear form, or the Druid better said, yeah, since then I'm kind of only chilling in Werebear form, even though it's kind of bad in that regard, because we don't have a lot of ways to sustain rage. There is gonna be a lot of things where you say reduce rage decay or no rage decay out of combat. There is other points later on where you basically get rage on hit, rage on crit, and this makes you able to sustain a permanent rage uptime, which means permanent Werebear uptime. As of right now, I don't have any of that, so basically I go into Werebear form, I'm charging forward, slamming a bunch of monsters, you know, just roaring up. But as you see, my rage decays quite fast, and then it throws me out of my form again. And it is what it is, and 2-3 seconds later I can go in and rinse and repeat, basically. It is a bit rough to play early on, but it's a weird thing in almost every game. I feel like every time there is a Druid class, they kind of suck at leveling, but once they are geared up, they just become S tier, basically, right? So this is the kind of the state of what my character is in. Yeah, level 27, start of Act 4, nothing to talk about too much, honestly. We can go a bit about the gearing and stuff like that, and the loot filter and things. So basically, yeah, early on, what you're gonna get, you know, just a bunch of rare items. Try to get life, especially physical resistance is quite nice. Try to get this as high as possible next to the others, and then just trying to get more and more resistances. But the thing is, resistance works different in Last Epoch than it does in other games. But overall, for the sake of the campaign, you know, as long as you have life and some form of resistance on your gear, you should be fine to be able to complete the entire thing, right? Hopefully. That's the current point of view, right? There is a kind of a two-hand staff that I found randomly, the Bow's Anarchy. I think there's this something that all the Falconers would like to have, but you know, I found it and it was better than my other weapon. So just for the sake of the melee attacks and the damage that I get out of it, was just an upgrade. The rest, you know, physical damage, health, resistance, and stuff like that. Nothing too crazy to report on the gearing front. There is one thing I want to talk about here briefly, is the Avarice Glove. So this is a quest report. Somewhere, I think in chapter 2 or something, and I'm sorry, I'm not a lore guy, I don't know what the actual idea is behind the quest, but you go into some library and you have to recover a book, and then you have 2 options to give it to either that guy or the other guy. One guy gives you an amulet, I think, as a reward. The other guy gives you these Avarice Gloves, and these gloves read 3% of elemental damage leech does health. So this is your early access to leech for your character, and I would not want to miss out, and it's probably good for you as well if you just pick up the gloves instead of the amulet and have a very good time recovering and self-sustaining your life while going through the campaign. Good. Skill-wise, we have Gathering Storm. I just spec'd early into the Maelstrom and the Rending Vortex and Storm Gathers, which basically means every time I'm hitting enemies with this, I get a stack. And the more stacks I have, the more frequent lightning storms will come down, right? But they decay quite fast, and there is a skill point even that says hey, if you would, whenever you expend a storm stack, so if you lose a stack, you have a chance to gain a stack instead of losing one. So it can be that you have 3 stacks, 2 stacks, and then again 3, and then 4 stacks. So it builds up passively, or at least you have a chance to do that. Then we have Lightning Strike twice, some extra single target, nothing too fancy. Then I opted into Warcry, going early for the Whirlpool node, which is basically means every time I'm using Whirlpool, I'm casting 4 stacks of Maelstrom, helping my single target and my AoE. And then we go into the Maelstrom itself, which I just rushed over to like minimum points, 1 point here, 1 point here, getting Wind Swept for the haste and Wind Fury for the frenzy, and the next points were just basically Whirlpool for longer duration, as well as Calm would be the next one. Then I have less mana cost and better mana management, or rage management in that case, once we go forward. So as I said, level 27, we're just in the start of the campaign, you know, nothing too crazy to report here. From the current state, I'm pretty sure that I might go into Swarmblade as soon as I unlock it, because when I played the beta, and I was leveling all random skills, I think I started with like a Maelstrom build, and I swapped over to the Swarmblade, and it was instantly, without even a skill tree attached, the Swarmblade form was doing like 10 times more damage than my actual Maelstrom Cold Dot build. So I just stick with that for the next 20-30 levels until I reached endgame, and then I started to do some werebear things and tried things out. And then my second character that I leveled was the Summon Thorn Totem, and this is something I can definitely recommend. It's a super easy and lazy playstyle, but the idea here is I want to make a lightning-based Rampage Autobomber Druid, which scales lightning and crit multi. If I would go ahead and do Summon Thorn Totems, that scales with like minion damage, with totem damage, with attunement, with physical damage to minions and stuff like that, all the scaling part does not apply to the build that I want to play. So you could either have an easy time in the campaign and say like, you know, I'm just going to play Thorn Totems, and once I'm at Monolith, I start farming gear with lightning damage and then swap over a certain point, or you do it the rough and hard way that I'm doing it. Say, I'm going to level as like a lightning-based kind of build and just pick whatever I feel like to continue the campaign, but early on trying to get things like lightning damage, crit strike chance, spell damage, strength, and so on and so forth on your gear, to have then an easier transition as soon as you get the level requirements, because the werebear has a note here: you gain additional spell damage per point of strength while werebear form, so this is like a strength stacking kind of thing at some point. And yeah, we're gonna see how it works out. One thing I want to mention here, craft early and craft often is like the kind of like the name of the game. Basically, whatever you find, if it has good stats, just throw it in and upgrade your stuff based on what you would like to have. Soaking up the fortune potential doesn't really matter. You don't have access to too many shards early on, but you're gonna get them, and there is like no point of not using them, because at some point you're gonna have like hundreds of health shards and hundreds of like void resistant shards. So why not use them early on to upgrade your gear to have to give you guys like or overall a better experience in the campaign. Good. This is like the kind of like first review of the launch day. As I said, was not able to play for like a good 5 hours or something like that. I did get level 4 before the server crashes happened, and afterwards I played until like 4 in the morning or something. Got the character to finish chapter 3, and today the big goal would be to actually finish the campaign and do my first monolith. And I'm a completionist, so I'm gonna do the entire campaign, even though I know it's not necessary, and I know you can go to Monolith earlier than that. But you know, as a completionist, it's like 1 time per character. Just finish the entire campaign, unlock all the idols, the passive points, the skill points, the whatever there is to do. I'm gonna do that, and once every quest is done, then we're gonna start farming up the monolith, up to the empowered monolith. But I'm gonna keep you guys updated day by day on the build progression. What is my goal? What did I do? What items did I change? And so on and so forth. I hope the servers are gonna be more stable today, and there will be no issues. As far as I see, there aren't any issues. So I hope this just like continues to do. And yeah, I guess see you guys on stream later on, or tomorrow on the next update video. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.